Going to stay on topic now just a bit longer and turn our attention to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's role in the massive Minnesota fraud scandal. In case you're not already aware, Omar sponsored the bill in which Congress initially created the Federal Meals Act program that's directly linked to her state's enormous Feeding Our Future welfare scheme. It's a big deal. Now, despite that program costing taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars in wasted money, she's standing firmly behind her legislation, claiming that it didn't lead to any type of fraud at all. And you got to wonder what planet she is living on. Omar now says she has no regrets at all for pushing the measure on Capitol Hill, that it has nothing to do whatsoever with what's going on in her state, and that on the contrary. She says it actually helped feed a bunch of needy school children. However, when you take a bit of a closer look, and I know you have, her statement really doesn't quite add up. The Congresswoman's bill, introduced right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was designed to modify the federal government's food and nutrition programs to allow certain waivers regarding school meals during that critical time. Since then, her home state, community, and district have all become ground zero for taking advantage of that measure, ultimately resulting in our nation's single largest COVID-era fraud scheme. The scam took advantage of a temporary loophole which allowed a bunch of non-school-based food distributors to take part in the federal nutrition program during the pandemic, and fraudsters would then go on to create false records and then bill the state for millions of meals which they never served. In my mind, that is pure evil. Since come to light that many of the accused have direct ties to Omar's local Somali community, including many defendants with personal links to the Congresswoman herself. And you can decide for yourself if you think that's worth noting. Me? I say it's worth noting, worth pointing out. In the meantime, one Florida lawmaker now weighing a move to actually bring Omar before Congress and force a vote permanently to remove her from the House of Representatives. That move coming in direct response to the Congresswoman's call for the Florida rep to be expelled himself. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Now, if you think Minnesotans are the only ones left to foot the bill for that legendary amount of fraud, you'd do well to kind of ponder this. Think about this. A large amount of pilfered dough in that state came from federal funds, which are amassed through taxation. And if you're like me, you pay taxes. Therefore, we are, all of us nationwide, you and I, we're on the hook for that monumental disaster. This really amounts to grand theft on a mammoth scale. And because Minnesota leadership has proven they're incapable of fixing their own mess, the Trump administration stepping up, moving in, and trying to TCB, take care of business. And by the way, be careful of the bait and switch on this story. You'll hear about it. Governor Timbo, he's making goofy claims about the president going after the Somali community. Well, that right there is a false narrative. He doesn't care about anyone's ethnicity. Rather, he simply wants to get to the bottom of the big caper, hold those responsible for it accountable, and prevent it from happening again. Good try, though, Tim. And for her part, Ilhan Omar, the one in charge of that state's 5th district, coming off as kind of delusional. Instead of talking about the real issue, fraud, on a tragic level, she's now claiming that 47 is obsessed with her and that he's creepy. And that's called deflection, strike one. She claims that her son was recently pulled over by ICE agents. We talked about that yesterday. I said never happened. And again, that's deflection, strike two. And attacking the Trump administration for their drug enforcement efforts. Deflection, strike three. And producer Davey, if this were a baseball game, I think that's called 3 strikes and you're out. Chime in, sir.
Well, Bill, you got that part right. In baseball, if you get 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to read. If you just look at her and listen to her, very easy to read. Easier to read than the National Enquirer, but not as much fun and certainly not as factual as the Enquirer. She's trying desperately to change the topic, but nobody's buying it. We're all on to the big scam. Try a little harder next time, Miss Omar.